Welcome. Thank you all for being here. This is our elementary gifted panel of experts. So we've got questions, but also if you all have questions, please ask them. More conversational as we go along. And as I ask questions, whoever wants to field them, if you want to add on to whatever someone said, just feel free to chime in. So first, we'll do a quick little around the group here. Tell us who you are, where you teach, and what first sparked your passion for working with gifted learners.
I'm Debbie Adams. I'm the gifted differentiation coach. I teach everywhere in district, but I've been at quite a few schools as a content replacement specialist over the years. What first sparked my passion for gifted learners was the fact that no 2 days were alike and they kept me on my toes and laughing.
I'm Celeste Rogers. I'm a gifted specialist at Desert Cove. This is my 21st year, but my first year in gifted, so I've taught all kinds of kids. I think we had a specialist right before we had Debbie there, and she said, I don't want you to give me the best of the best. I want you to look at the kids that are having struggles with behavior, sitting still. And I was like, okay. And she was right. It was those kids that I found that were super bright and fell in love with it.
My name is Megan Newman. I'm the gifted specialist at Fireside. And I think what has inspired me to jump into this world of giftedness was actually one of my own children was identified very young, and I was just fascinated and intrigued with the way he thought. And as I became a teacher and over the years, I just thought to myself, why can't I do this with more kids? Why can't I peel away the layers of an onion and see how they all think differently and their curiosity, and just realizing that so many gifted students are dynamic in their own way.
I'm Yelisa Prose, and I teach the content replacement at Larkspur. I've been a teacher for a little over 10 years, but this is also my first year teaching gifted. I would say that what inspired me is very similar to your story. Both of my kids have been in the program since pre-K, and I was doing these seminars and books and all that stuff, and it really just it made me think the same thing, like maybe I should do this too, and also just support the parents as well, because I remember being very confused and not sure which direction to go. So I want to use, my own personal experience. And
I'm Karen Milligan, and I'm at Copper Canyon, the gifted specialist. And I was the gifted cluster teacher at Copper Canyon third grade for 18 years. So I started a long time ago when it kind of was new, I'd say. And I was just, those students always just interested me because they were so curious. And then I think also they were misunderstood with behaviors and things like that. So that was part of the reason I wanted to get more involved.
I am Jennifer Weiss. I teach the 1-2 comprehensive gifted at Sonora Sky. It's my 23rd year in public education. It's my 13th year in PV gifted. And I've also taught the Choice Exceptional program. My connection is also very personal. I was identified as a gifted learner as a child, and so was my brother, who was 3 years younger. And on paper, we had identical scores, but it manifested so tremendously different. I was very creative and free-spirited and verbal linguistic. He was science and math. I am still very intense. He couldn't sleep. He would stay up late tinkering and inventing things. So by the time I was 16 and he was 13, he created a plasma in our basement in New Jersey, which is now on display in the Liberty Science Center as part of his eQuest exhibit. By the time he was 16, he was working at the Princeton Plasma Physics Laboratory. He went to Princeton undergrad. He went to Brown graduate. He was working on something called the Genome Project at the time that he passed, which was very sudden, very tragic. And I think, a gifted mind can be a blessing and a curse. And he really did struggle throughout his life socially and emotionally. And he, had a lot of asynchronous development, a lot of intensities, overexcitabilities, we call them, and gifted. And my mom said that, I wish that he had a program like the programs that we offer here, because if his needs had been identified at such an early age, we would have been able to not only nurture his strengths, but very much support his areas of need and scaffold him in ways that perhaps he wasn't. So when I moved from New Jersey here and I figured out that I could actually teach gifted learners and be a part of this, that was what I did. And now I am also the parent of two.
I'm Carmen Shattuck, and I am the gifted specialist at campus. There. And I also have 3 gifted kids at home that are all very different, very similar. And I think through their story, I started to learn about my own giftedness and the own ways that I learned, and kind of those things that I've come up against, especially like I also have ADHD, which I didn't find out until like 2 or 3 years ago when my kid got diagnosed, and it was like, oh, all of these things make so much more sense now. And so it's been an interesting journey to navigate. And I feel like it just kind of, my path just went towards gifting just because I felt like I could just relate with those kiddos. I felt like, just at home. So I've been teaching for 4 years, but this is also my first year with gifted, and I love it. It's infectious. It's so fun. I just feel like there might be.
I'm Susan Flores. I'm the gifted program mentor, but I have also taught many years of cluster and many years of comprehensive gifted. But now I get to teach all students from, I get to work with students and teachers across the district, from pre-K all the way to our Journey of Quest program. Stories are very similar. I heard curiosity. That is why I'm interested in this. I heard experiencing gifted as a child. I have done that too. I think gifted is just fun. I love the curiosity of students, their passion, their need to learn. They need to know. They need to ask the questions because they really want to know. And their divergent thinking is a lot of fun, which means I can incorporate as a teacher, as a gifted program mentor, different ways to reach their learning. That is way beyond just pencil, paper, and a worksheet. So it's a lot of fun. So that's why I love it. And these are my people. The gifted kids are my people. It's fun.
Thank you. All right, if you could whisper one piece of encouragement into the ear of every gifted child when they feel frustrated or different, what would it be?
I can start that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times they think they need to be fixed. They don't need to be fixed. They are exactly who they should be. And a lot of times the stuff that they're doing is so before a lot of other children. So they're the ones that are inventing and doing all the stuff later on. So I think a lot of times like, oh, we need to fix this behavior. No, you don't. That's who they are. And they feel like they need to be fixed because a lot of times they don't feel socially with the rest of the peers. And so I think just getting them used to knowing who they are, being comfortable with who they are and proud of who they are. I would say that's the biggest thing.
I hear that too when they feel that they're different. I say, different is great. This is awesome. What you're thinking, what you're doing. And then it's really helpful in the classroom to study others in history who have thought differently and people were against them. And look what we have. If people were different, we wouldn't have a cell phone. If people were different, we wouldn't have many things in our lives. And so I help them celebrate their divergent thinking. This is awesome, because if everyone thought alike, we would still be horse and buggy,
Yeah.
Wouldn't have changed. Yeah, it's good to be unique.
I like the Harry Potter analogy. I always teach them that they're like little wizards. They have superpowers. Harry was different too, right? And often at conferences, I say things like, well, her wand is misfiring, but I teach her to hone her powers. And one day she's going to use this for amazing things. So
I think I think one thing that I would say too is like, it doesn't have to be perfect. Like so many gifted kids feel like they need to be perfect and it needs perfection. I need to master it right now, right away. And they get so discouraged if they like make a mistake or don't come up with it the first time. I love to use the book Rose Revere Engineer because she creates all these inventions and it fails the first time. And she has an aunt that helps her to realize like, oh no, the failure is a process. Like it's like, part of the way that we learn is all the way is through failure. But so many times gifted kids, they start off with being the smartest and knowing all the answers. So they get all this positive validation for their giftedness. And then
as they get into programs like ours, and it's more challenging, they get so discouraged if they get an answer wrong. I just wish that I could help them see like, no, this is exactly where you're meant to be. You're supposed to be struggling. You're supposed to, that's how we get that deeper knowledge.
To piggyback on that, a lot of my kids refer to me as teacher of yet, because I do whisper to them when they say, especially the kids who come to me for the first time, I can't do this. This is too hard. And I whisper to them, yet, or you can't right now, but you will. And it gets to the point where you just have to look at them when they have that negative comment of, this is too difficult, I just can't. And then I'll just have to look at them and they say, yet, right? Yet. Okay. And then it just allows them to persevere and build some resilience. So I know that that's something that's very common and gifted teachers in our district. There's even books. I think it's The Magic of Yet,
The
The
Power
Power
of
of
Yet.
Yet. That we read to our students, and that helps with that confirmation that it's okay. You don't know it yet. That's why you come to school. Otherwise, we send you right to Harvard because you have it all. So you don't know it yet. And a lot of our teachers do have posters in the classroom celebrating that power of yet. It's okay.
All right, great. We often hear the term neurodiversity. How do you create a classroom environment where students with different ways of thinking feel safe enough to take big risks?
I think one of the things that, like she was saying, the greatest gift is mistakes and learning from them. And so they have to be really safe, having that safety, and so that they can be, they just need to be comfortable to be able to do what they do. And I think the safety part is the first step for them to have to show more intellectual knowledge versus the other parts of it. So for me, that's what it is. It's just every email that goes out is your greatest gift is mistakes and learning from them, because they have to learn. One of the things they struggle with is that perfection and having to have everything right. And so they need to learn to make mistakes. We need to be kind when we do make mistakes, because other kids will say something and they learn real quick that is not, we're not doing that. And we try to find a way that sometimes there's more than one answer. And so there's not just one answer, there's several answers that could be correct, and that does help as well. And me making mistakes. I make mistakes all the time. Yes, but there's, and we show those, like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe you just did it that way. How did you do that? So just showing them that there's just not one right way or one good answer, and being comfortable with them.
And I think a lot of times my kids collaborate. I think when they feel safe, like you're saying, taking risks is difficult for them, but if they're with a group, then they feel a lot safer and they'll discuss and talk and open up, and things they have to say are just amazing.
Well, and some of the components of neurodiversity are different ways of processing information and of handling stimulation and success and failure. So providing an environment that encourages risk-taking, that is safe, and where students feel loved and celebrated for their efforts more than their accomplishments is really very important. Allowing opportunities for choice to demonstrate learning is another way to address neurodiversity, because having choice in how I show you I've mastered this gives me some ownership in that process.
I also have a multi-age classroom, so I have 2 grades in one classroom. And so a huge part of that is piggyback on that is community building. And differentiation. So we're not always all doing the same thing at the same time. But one of the things that we do, we know who our experts are. In the beginning of the year, everyone identifies something that they're good at. So if someone's screen is doing something weird, we have tech support. If someone needs to spell a word, we know which child to ask. If I can't, I'm like, child's upset because he can't draw something. Well, we have a friend who's a really good artist, right? So it's like to just sort of recognize their strengths and rely upon each other. And we have a lot of things we do. We do kid news every day. So if it's your kid news day, you're going to share something about yourself from home, and that we do a lot of I mean, my kids are younger, but just the conversation, that's a skill. So you have to actually connect to the speaker and then ask a question, but don't just talk about yourself, because children are like, oh, I went to Disneyland, it's so. I spend a large part of my day with that social emotional piece and that community building, so that we're sort of like a little
And it has to start day one.
Absolutely.
So they know that they're walking into a safe place and where mistakes are celebrated and you're modeling it. In fact, sometimes we'll do some error analysis where problems are put up on the board that are created by a fake student, for instance, and we as a class determine where the error is and why do you think that student thought this way? What do you think they could have been thinking so that they realize, oh, we're here to learn and manage our mistakes and celebrate them and grow from them. I think it's about the process, not necessarily perfection.
Which is really.
It is very different.
That should be a t-shirt or a poster.
Yeah.
Process, not perfection.
Yeah.
Well, and I think with anything, if people believe that you love them,
Yeah.
they're willing to jump through hoops for you because they feel safe. So I think developing relationships with students is the first part of any successful teaching relationship. That's where it starts. Those relationships are where things build.
And many of us are fortunate enough to have them for 3 years, that we do build this solid foundation relationship with them.
I think that was the hardest part when I was teaching fifth grade for 18 years and we do all this building and have our weekly class meetings and do all this stuff and then I'd have to let
And she didn't let them go.
still. But now I get to keep them for 3 years. It's very exciting to me.
I think it's very important for gifted children, when they're all neurodiverse in different ways, that's why they're with us. They need to know that these are their people, that they have these things in common, even if they all have differences. And it is building those relationships with the teacher, especially because to get to know what they're interested in helps us draw out the learning, because like Deb said earlier, we can offer choice. Like, what are you interested in and how can we use that strength to our advantage as teachers to pull them knowledge? Like, how can we incorporate their interest? I had a student who was very interested in Pokemon, everything Pokemon. And we were able to incorporate her interest into her learning to engage her. And it made learning fun because she could incorporate what she was interested in because we built that relationship. And I got what I needed from her to, for that growth and learning. So it is building those relationships and really getting to know their interests and working with that.
All right, share a favorite win or a success story from your classroom this year. What's one unique trait of gifted kids that makes you excited to come to work every day? Hard to pick just one.
I could start. I have a student that is a sixth grader. And so it's been through all of the, classrooms and you hear it, and, when you go into this, you try to just, for me at least, like we're saying, get to know the kids right away, how you want to get to know them. And this child I knew came with some definitely neurodiverse child. And I built that relationship from day one, and he has done so much. Beginning was, would sit with his head down, didn't want to do his work. But when he knew that when I kind of bought in, kind of like you're saying with the Pokemon, like found out what interested him. And, I even got at Valentine's Day, I even got something he made on his printer, this 3D printer. And I was like, wow, this could really, because for him to do that is huge. So I've had a difficult time all the way through. So it's kind of cool. It just makes you feel like, okay, I did something here. So, but then, there's so many other kids too, but this one, that's been my star of the year, I guess.
Does a win within the year count? Because I haven't had a classroom this year.
Yes, we'll allow it.
Thank you. I had a student last year who, when I met him, was under a table. He did not prefer to pick up a pencil to write anything, and anytime he was asked to put anything on paper, it was an emotional breakdown. I learned early on in the year that the standardized testing was a very trying day, especially the day of the writing assessment. And he had really folded and had a real, decompensation during that test the year before. So I made it a goal of mine in the back of my brain to get him to love writing and to get him through that test. And we went through it, and what I found was that he thought, he said, I'm the math guy. I'm the math
I
guy.
did think.
You know who I'm talking about. I'm the math guy. I'm the math guy. So I was like, well, writing is a formula. It's just like math. And we sort of started to play with it this way. He not only nailed the writing test last year, but he got a perfect score. I want to say and is so proud and is now writing prolifically. With excitement every time I go in to visit that classroom, he shows me what he's working on. So
Neat kid.
he is a neat kid.
I had him go to summer school. He said where he's from, and I go, you have this. So he goes, I do. And I was like, he's so cute. So yes, no, I was like, as soon as she said that, I'm like, he's very much a presence.
And he's this big.
I have to say, for me, it's just, I don't know if it's just one kid, but it's several, especially one of my girls, my sixth grade girls, when I came into my job, there hadn't been a specialist. And so the kids really did not have any confidence in themselves when it came to the math. And so what I've noticed, especially with several of them, but especially one of them, she has gone from like a 30% at the beginning of the year to 70 to 80% on her ACE of practice test. She's getting things like the other day we were doing a practice and she was the only one in the class that got it. Like, explain how you did that, and the confidence. So I think building that confidence and them knowing I can do this, I am capable of this. She is a star. She's not afraid to ask questions anymore. So I would say that's probably my one, but there's several of them that have gone to that point.
I have a student who we wrote bio poems in the beginning of the year, and she revealed about herself that she wasn't sure she should be there. She just wasn't sure she should be there. And throughout the year, she has found her voice through a Socratic seminar, and she is my best debater in the class. And for me, that was a win for her. Hopefully, I get her for one more year. So
At the end of next year, you have to show her what she wrote.
I will. I'm keeping them. Yeah.
Giftedness isn't just about high academic achievement. It's about high intensity. What are some of the social or emotional hurdles you see these students facing? And what classroom supports do you offer?
I think a hurdle is the expectation that gifted kids are perfect. They're going to have all the high scores. They cannot disappoint. And I think that's the intensity, some of it, of being gifted, that the expectations are placed on them. They place it on themselves, but it's also done in subtle ways too. As parents, sometimes they don't realize when you say things like, oh, you always get 100. That's that message of pressure right there. And it's not meant to be pressure because your child is usually doing well. So I see that come into the classroom too, where other people outside of gifted just have these high expectations. And students get frustrated, or they get the imposter syndrome. They think they don't belong, mistake, or they're struggling with something, and I'm gifted, I'm not supposed to struggle, it's supposed to be easy. So there's the intensity of it. And I think just getting to know the students, almost celebrating mistakes sometimes. We actually used to celebrate mistakes. I don't know, oh, right, you just work hard because you were willing to admit there was a mistake and we worked through it. And just kind of normalizing that it's okay, and it's not about the grade or the thing that gets hung up on a refrigerator, but it's really the process, the thinking, and that it was their own work and they made it. And then I think to add to that intensity is to let them reflect. Like, well, how do you think you did? What did you do? If you're happy with your work, that's fine, because they'll come up and say, see, is this good? Is this good? And they want our blessing, approval. And I usually throw them off and I go, well, what do you think? Am I done? I don't know, are you? Like kind of letting them feel good about their work rather than looking for that extra. So there's that intensity that I see. Perfect.
And to piggyback on what you just said, our job as specialists is to challenge students and to bring them to places that are harder and to invite them to take those risks. And to be willing to take those risks, we have to be able to make the mistakes because the learning happens through the mistakes. I wish more parents would hang the 60% paper on the refrigerator and celebrate the 60% that they grew and the fact that they only have 40% left instead of always celebrating the 100%, which simply shows that in many cases they knew it before they even started. So think about it. If you're really learning something, you're starting at 0, or you're starting at 5%, or you're starting at 10%. That's 50% growth.
And don't you remember your mistakes? Like,
Yes.
you can learn from them. Right?
Yes.
If you don't make a mistake, you haven't really learned anything. You make a mistake like, oh, I'm not gonna take that.
Right.
Right? And then you've learned.
One of the things that we were talking about before is, it seems to be like a big transition year from like 3rd to 4th, 4th to 5th, because, K-3, they just seem to have it. Right, and then all of a sudden they get into the gifted program or they're getting into areas that they haven't learned before, and it's a struggle, and that's where they start getting imposter syndrome, the other things, because all of a sudden they're going to have to work a little to learn what they have. It's just not coming, right?
Better
And
to
they're-
do it in elementary school, right?
Yeah.
And not figure that out.
Exactly.
A lot of these kids start kindergarten as readers.
Yeah.
So the rest of the class is learning the alphabet and they already know how to read. Isn't school a beautiful place until somebody hands you calculus? You know?
I don't know. I was gonna say, when it came to mind when you asked the challenge this year, in particular, emotional self-regulation has been our.
Yes.
I don't know why it's more this year, but I mean, even little ones, and maybe they know they're gifted. I try to minimize that at that age. I don't think they need to know that they're gifted. But I think at any age, I feel like we have to create a safe space for them. And it's sort of like part of the culture of our classroom. I had one under the table for large part of the year. And they all know it's okay. She's under the table, and when she's calm, she's gonna come out. Because I'm like, well, when you can use your big girl words, I'd love to help. But I have to learn not to, in the moment, it's not the time. So we have to give her strategies. Is this big problem? Is this small? And breathing, I have stuffed animals, I have flexible seating, but whatever. And and it happens to the best of us, we get upset. And then, and I think it is that asynchronous development. It's like, my brain is here, but my emotions are here and I can't reconcile the two. And as soon as they're calm and we can talk about like, okay, that was a little tricky. That's okay. Like, my job is to help you, but I can't help you if you don't use your words and tell me what's wrong. So, but first, yeah, it's been a big year for that. And I think, I don't know if it's because they were the babies. I mean, I've heard that, but, not that they're old.
You're gonna come out from under the table soon.
Yeah.
Okay, if a parent wants to fuel their child's curiosity this weekend without it feeling like extra homework, what's your favorite go-to resource or activity?
Okay. I think anything that is spent talking with their children, like cooking, baking, building Lego sets, taking a walk in nature, camping, fishing, anything that they can have communication and just some time is going to be the best. And they can learn during that time, not even knowing. Cooking and doing fractions, right?
I was gonna say hot take, but I just think, childhood should be a journey.
It should be, yeah.
And they should be just playing and, stress free. I mean, and I know there are a lot of parents, and all of our kids are overscheduled, sure, but like, not every parent wants to hear that. So my other new favorite, Susan knows this, is the New York Times.
Yeah, it's fun.
Like my kids, the New York, everyone probably knows Wordle, right? But if you go into the app, we have spelling bee and there's connections and so we do that in my first grade class when every day we try to get to genius. And now I have kids on the weekends. It's a scream, but they'll say, I got to genius yesterday. And to me, it's mind-boggling that a first grader can get to genius in the spelling bee.
Yeah,
That's amazing. But, yeah, no, but my first answer is really just.
But yeah,
Yeah.
because like art,
Be a kid.
I have a 5-year-old, he's in kindergarten, loves art. I get lots, I have lots. So this is, he'll bring stuff for his teacher. He enjoys pine cones. We put peanut butter and stuff on them for the birds, like just stuff that they enjoy and the communication is, I think, key thing there is just
Yeah.
having those great conversations with them.
Well, I think too, asking a lot of questions. I try to let them guide the conversation when I'm doing activities. My own kids, it's, it's less about what you're doing, but it's like, hey, where do you think we do that? Or sometimes they'll ask me a question, I'm like, I don't know, what do you think? So it's like pushing it back on them and not just answering the question for them. It's just easy to say, oh, well, it's this, but like my daughter, we were at the ocean for spring break, and somebody asked, like, what's the, what makes the waves happen? And she goes, the moon. It's like, she's in 3rd grade. It's we both said it at the same time. It was so fun. And it just turned into this big conversation about the moon and how that works. And I'm like, how did you find that out? She's like, I get to, I mean, it's just, so it was just fun, but like using those opportunities to like engage in the questioning too.
Honestly, one of the most valuable activities I spent with my kids when they were little that seems boring and meaningless was grocery shopping and figuring out the meals, deciding what the best bargain we could get and how, was it better to buy this on sale in the bigger package or 2 of the smaller ones, discussing all of the different weights and things and what we would need to cook different things. We spent a lot of time in the grocery store. I was getting what I needed to get done and they were learning all the time. So by the time they were old enough, they were making the list and figuring out the sales for me and the deals, and it was great.
I think they should be a little boredom.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think boredom is okay.
Mhm.
So
Comfortable for them.
I know. And the
Right, kids
parents
would
too,
do,
right?
right? Yeah.
But there should not be any recycling in your house. It should be in their bedrooms with all the tape that you don't have.
Mhm.
They should be building, they should be fixing their own boredom so that they can explore their own curiosities. Out of boredom comes creation, comes art, following their own passions. I think a little bit of downtime is perfectly fine. And if they say they're bored, I think it's okay to say, well, what are you gonna do about that?
Mhm.
Versus here's the iPad, or let me schedule a play date, or let's schedule, some kind of sport thing that parents have to create and cart students around. I think it's important to be a little bored and let them be comfortable with that boredom is okay, and go figure it out.
Well, and I think when you said, what are you gonna do about that? When you said instead of fixing it, you're teaching them to problem solve. You're teaching them to self-soothe. You're teaching all of this self-regulation thing. And what are you gonna do about that? And I think that's really important. They need to learn to entertain themselves.
I say to my own 2 boys, morning people get bored. So, one of my sons is very interested in entrepreneurship, so he'll build a lemonade stand. There's a ton of learning that goes involved in that. And I think it's okay to also expose your kids to things on the weekend that they wouldn't necessarily even know exist. Take them to a museum, take them to a library, where they're not reading on their iPad with digital sense. A lot of kids don't even know that a public library exists. So,
And that's true.
exposing them to things that they may not see in the classroom. Volunteering, I think, is a really beneficial thing for a lot of these students, how they can help their community and see the bigger world around them and become lifelong world.
I think also just the example of the parents, like, when they see you being interested in different things, and having spaces to do that in your house, like for us, we're really creative at my house, so I have spaces with lots of materials and whatever, like things that I've collected, so they have, when they are bored, they have things that they can create. So just having the space too.
I know, my son has a whole area that stores all the export stuff in it, and he creates all the time. And he also is definitely we grew sunflowers last year. The big ones that have the sunflower seeds. And so he did it again this year. They're like 3 foot tall. So he makes sure to take pictures, send them to Gigi and grandma. They just, so he's found gardening, he's found art. Yeah. I think that's what a lot of them need is that curiosity, exploration.
I think the lack of immediate gratification, so valuable. I think it is so valuable for so many different reasons, but I think that sometimes the screen time is a, you know, a killer of creativity
Imagination.
and imagination.
And it's to some of your comments, like it's building empathy outside of ourselves. And that sometimes can help with anxiety, right? So you're not just focused on yourself, right? You're focused on others. And then, like when you had mentioned the lemonade stand and the creativity, I'm thinking of executive functioning. That takes planning, organization, problems, all those things that translate to school, to learning in the classroom. So I think on a weekend, that's a good time for students to explore. If you're looking for something that's more structured, I did have a parent recently tell me that they do a quarterly novel study in the family where they all read the same book and then they all over dinner discuss different elements of the story, and it's just a way for them to connect. Structure. There's better conversation and character.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Right, many gifted learners struggle with the all or nothing mindset. How do you help students move past the fear of making a mistake? We touched on this a bit, so they can embrace the process of learning.
And I start with what I like to do in my classroom. I like to approach everything as a scientist. I think if we talk about the importance of science and doing a study 3 times to make sure that our results are verified, to make sure that, oh, that experiment failed. So I try to make them understand that everything that we do is an experiment. And, you know, we'll do an activity and like, ooh, that activity did not work. Sorry. But, you know, it's just another failure that helps us learn. Okay, well, now I know how to tweak it for next time or figure it out. So it's something that their brains can kind of hold on to that's more logical, and it takes it out of more of an emotional place, because I think so often it's an emotional thing to make a mistake and feel like, but if you put it in a logical sense of, oh, it's just another way that I failed, and it's helped me in my life and my journey, and like, oh, I just gotta dust myself off and get back up again. But like I said, if you view it in the form of science, like you can show all of these different ways, all of these different people failed first and then succeeded. So I think that's helped me.
A great way to show that too is the copyright of a book. So how many times a book has been copyrighted based on, you know, the author making a mistake and the printer has had to reprint the book or edit again. And it shows them that even award-winning authors, professionals make mistakes and have to go back and fix it. It costs money, you know, and we have to own it and fix it. And so I think the real world connection really helps them. And watching, when we've already said this, but watching this thing.
I always let them know when I make a
Yeah,
mistake.
I do it all the time and it's right.
They let you know.
Oh, yeah, exactly. But I will admit, the teacher,
I know who, anytime she makes a mistake and somebody points it out, they get a. So like if they're the one to point it out, so they're really eager to find this mistake, and she's rewarding it by encouraging. So, you know, then they all laugh it off. Right. It's great. So,
Yeah, and they're engaged.
Right.
Yeah, they're listening.
They're listening for that mistake.
That's really true.
My kids used to laugh at me at the time. So people would do the math, just like repeat that. And then I would say the answer, like, and they would start giggling at me. I'm like, all right, let's try this. And then we'd go over it again. And I don't know how many times I've done it. And they're like, Mr. Rogers, you just, you know, because you just start getting into it. And so, and they're in it, and we're going back and forth. And so I do that often, or I'll say one thing and write something else. Or like, you wrote the wrong number there. Like, oh, I'm so sorry. Oops. again, you
Well,
know,
and I've given kids tests with all the answers on them, so they think I've accidentally handed them the answer key. And they go, oh, you gave us a ha 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 ha, ha," and I go, yeah, but 3 of them are wrong.
Just gonna say that like what you guys are doing is nice that you make them feel comfortable with that uncomfortable feeling when you don't know something, because a lot of times when kids, like you said, they've known something for a long time, now they don't, and they're just like, oh no, what am I gonna do now? And it's just like those little steps, just getting comfortable being in that.
they're really,
They are.
they are. I brag everybody.
It is.
I did ask her, I've known her for 15 years.
I talked her
or two.
into the job. So there you go.
Giftedness can sometimes be masked by other factors like ADHD, dyslexia, or anxiety, often called twice exceptional or 2E. How do you identify and support the strengths of a child who might be struggling?
And this is what I started with, is not realizing, especially being in the school that I was in, we were the largest titled school before where I'm at. And so when what was her name? I can't remember. The one that's before you.
Alice Carney.
Yes, Carnesi was there and she was like, I want you to look for these kids. And they were definitely 2E kids. I never would have thought to look at that as a regular ed teacher going, oh my gosh. And it clicked. And so, and we have lots, now I see it all the time. I was like, I missed that years ago, but yeah, so I think like looking at them, realizing like they're not just a behavior, there's other stuff that is going on, and we need to figure out how we're going to first work with them in their areas, their levels, and help them. Because all of us are different learners. They are
I think
too.
we're all too.
We are.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the best way to remediate any weakness or something that you need to, you need to improve upon or grow within is through an area of strength. I think that's a very important component into reaching those kids and those learners. Too often a student that struggles with reading gets put into extra reading classes. So they're spending all day doing what they really struggle with, and they don't have any opportunity to showcase what they're very good at. So if we remediate weaknesses through strengths, we're giving them the opportunity to work on skills in an area that they shine.
To piggyback off that, I have a student right now that's in his resource for reading, but he doesn't go to read. He actually comes to me for reading because he's actually identified in reading also. So, but at first I was really nervous about the struggle, but we found out ways, like we use Audible, so he can listen to the stories. And the discussions are his favorite thing. Socratic, he is a rock star, and it's just so cool to see it because you would never know it in somewhere else. It could be just stuck in remedial reading and not be
Learning
able to
how to
shine
solve
his
it.
ways that he can. So
One of the-
that's really cool.
I have the same thing. I have a child that has an IEP and comes to me, is gifted. And she has the best conversations. When it comes to written work, she struggles. So we do talk to text. There's other ways of doing it, but amazing. But yeah, at first you're like, how are you both?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're both.
Yeah.
You're definitely both.
Then you hear them speak and like, okay.
Yeah, one of the biggest identifiers for me, or one of the biggest clues, is you have this advanced thinking, an advanced vocabulary, articulation, but a low achievement. And so something's going on. That's the biggest clue. And so I know all of us collaborate with all the stakeholders involved, parents and students themselves, or other specialists on our site to really maybe provide flexibility in learning, or in product, or modifications or accommodations if needed and where needed. So it's a collaborative process when you eventually get to the root of a student. And
1,001 questions.
yeah, it's like
They're really good questions. You should puzzle.
the reason why I love our gifted community is because we're very narrow affirming. And we understand that those are not weaknesses, they're strengths. And we have to learn how we as teachers are going to work with them. And in the classroom, we normalize the differences that we all. And so it's very neuro affirming. And in our community, in our gifted community, we really understand that as teachers. And that's why our kids feel so safe in our classrooms, because that's where they get to be who they are. And still grow and still overcome whatever they need to overcome, work with it and then just
They're
feel
such a-
capable. Right? Feel capable, but unique. And I think that's really important.
And it's
To
the most
instill.
rewarding part about being a teacher is when you figure that out and you put it together and you see that light go off and that smile on their face. You know, it's what has kept me here for way too many years.
And also, I think when you allow different options of product to show your knowledge, your depth of knowledge, that really is low risk for them. So they can choose how they want to produce their work and allows, I don't know, it just allows them to feel themselves. And
You get
celebrating
more
the
from it.
process.
Yeah.
Not just the end result, but the process, like, look, you know, and showing their growth within. Do a choice board.
I know at the beginning of the year, she gave me, I think, it's my first year, first time having 4, 5, 6. I didn't know all my students. And so we did an expertise project. Oh my gosh, it was so fun because we literally had girls and they're teaching other kids how to dance, talking about roller skating. I got to know my kids so well because they got to choose anything they wanted. They got to present it anytime, any way they wanted. It was really, really neat. And I got to see my kids and I was like, okay, I know where their strengths are.
And it built their confidence.
It did.
and it made them feel safe, and it gave them a sense of
I
community.
should have
because-
taken like videos
Yeah.
of the girls teaching the boy, and they were trying, the boys were trying these dance moves. It was so fun. I was like, yes, this is what it's about, and not being fearful. They really came together as a community. I think that helped them. One of them did a thing on bunnies. They love bunnies. They helped pictures of bunnies, and so their stuff is all about taking care of animals, and that was their expertise. And so it was amazing.
And I like the idea of differentiating expectations.
Mhm.
You don't expect the same thing from.
No,
I think it's that one size, I think it's not that they have trouble learning, but sometimes they have trouble learning in a certain learning environment. We as educators meet them where they are and not expect the same thing from every child. And I think, yeah.
One thing you wish every parent knew about the transition from elementary to middle school or a gift with them.
It's
Oh.
hard.
It's so hard.
I can tell you
They're already hurt.
out of it. The biggest thing is their expectations are still really, really high, coming from 6th grade to 7th grade. The biggest thing that I try to tell people, even though, I mean, mine have been even going like from 4th to 5th as a transition, 5th to 6th, departmentalizing. So they have more than one teacher. Now all of a sudden they're going from 2 or 3 classes in an entire school that they've gone K-6 with into a junior high that has 6, 7, 8 elementary schools walking in. So their community is different. Their friends are going to be different. So what I see most of the time is that first quarter, sometimes the grades go down a little bit, but they are learning how to survive socially and emotionally in a totally different atmosphere. They're learning about more than 1 or 2 teachers. They're learning about 5 or 6 teachers. So I think just being like, not having such high expectations for them, maybe academically, and allowing them to kind of learn socially and emotionally how their teachers think, how they're going to work, and learning to communicate with their teachers is the biggest thing. About October-ish, the end of October is where I start seeing them grasp things. Like, okay, I got this. I can talk to this teacher about this. I know my students here, who my new friends are. And now I can really start hitting the academics a little bit harder. And that's what I've known. It's been like a social emotional and then academics.
I have a 7th grader too, and it's funny in the parent chat, because we as parents have to fall back. Like,
Yes,
we
you
have
do.
to let them like you said, communicate with their teachers, the missing assignment. It's like, nope, we are not helping them at this point. I mean, we're so used to in elementary conferencing with teachers and
Yes.
emailing the teacher, and it's like, nope, that's like, my daughter was crying last night. I don't think I'm gonna get this on. Well, that's on you. You have 2 choices right now. You can stay up late, You can go to bed, you know, you can email your teacher, you can wake up early, let me know, but this is on you. So, yeah.
Well, and I think that, what's really important, as you said, is that sudden release of, you know, scaffolding is not fair to them. I think it's important to build those executive functions as they get older. I think it's okay. I mean, even my kids, when they were little, if I wouldn't go talk to a teacher if they asked me to, unless they had already done it themselves. And I walked through with them how to do that, because once they get into middle school, they're gonna have to meet the expectations of multiple different personalities. And everything's not gonna go the way they want, and mom and dad can't fix it. And it's a matter of understanding expectations, being able to read the room. Understanding, you know, I can do this with Mr. Jones, but I can't do this with Mr. Williams. And he'll accept it late, or maybe not this way, but this teacher wants it this way. So I think it's really important to help foster that independence as they're getting older. You know, if they forget their backpack at home or they forgot their homework, well, there's a consequence for that. But if you run and you save them, you know, up until middle school, and then you can't save them anymore, that's a shock.
I was thinking along those lines too,
Yeah.
because even as a fourth grade teacher, I'm not just getting them ready for fifth grade.
Right.
I'm getting ready, having them get ready for life. And I would tell them, this is why we do it this way. And I know in second grade, maybe you did a different way, because sometimes I'll hear that in parent conferences, but back in second grade, you know, we don't want our 35-year-old child to still do things that they did in second grade, right? We keep growing. So sometimes, when we do have parent-teacher conferences, it's hard to release, but we do it slowly, and we do it with intention, with loving intention as teachers to help scaffold. Because I was thinking the same thing. It doesn't just start in sixth grade.
No.
It starts long before that to help them, because it's much easier to make those mistakes when they're younger and to learn from it, so that by the time they get to middle school, they know how to check their grades on their own. They know how to go into a group. They know how to fill out an agenda, still using that, but, you know, physical paper. They know how to talk to the teacher. And then they can call in for help if they're not getting any, because they are kids, right? So they're still learning. But
Learning to be organized.
we're trying to help them along the way every year.
Well, and I think something that I've said to my own kids and I've said to my students over the years, you know, in second grade, your teacher has 25 students all day that they get to know intimately well. And they really, you know, all those little quirks and nuances and things like that. Middle school, a teacher sees 160 kids a day in 5 different periods that rotate for 53 minutes. It's a different type of relationship. It's not a less caring relationship, but your product is a lot of the message that you're giving to that teacher. Your presence and your product matter. How you sit in a seat matters. Your body language is giving a message, and you have 53 minutes to give it well. You know, and I think that's a different mindset.
I think my answer to this would have been different before I had a middle schooler and a high schooler. But for me, with my experience, the academia will be there. Because they placed into certain classes, they're choosing electives. And so my shift as a parent has become to help them with their identity, to help them navigate who they are, because they see 6 or 7 teachers for 50 minutes a day who are telling them they're a different person every period. And so, and then groups of friends helping them identify who they are and where they want to, the path that they want to take, path they want to lead. And so, with all my might, I sometimes have to step back and let them make their own choices, but there are natural consequences with that. But being there as a parent for that identity development is probably the most beneficial thing you can do in those 2 years. And thank God. Middle school. But yes, so for me, I think my answer would have been different prior to my own experience. age.
Yeah, I was gonna say too, like, I have a middle schooler as well, like, all these different personalities of teachers, it's also just not assuming that they know what you need, it's really asking what you want or what you're thinking or what you're missing and just going and emailing or asking those questions or being really specific versus just assuming the teacher's not gonna let you or teacher's not gonna allow it or whatever. Because just it's a skill as an adult to just, if you need something, you gotta ask for it or request it. So
It's another safe place to grow up a little bit before they go to high school. When grades become money, you know,
Right.
they are learning about GPAs now, they're learning about maneuvering. It's another little test, another area to experience and fail and try again. So that by the time they get to high school, where grades matter a little bit more for placement, where they want to go next. It's just a nice experimental time, and it goes by so. And for many of them, it's a clean slate too, right?
Mhm.
A clean slate.
We can recreate.
Yes.
I mean, I think, like I said, organization is really, really key. It does help them if they understand how to organize all the classes by folders, by colors, whatever it might be, so that they aren't looking for one through one folder for 5 different things. So just helping them learn to organize their area for their backpack and for their classes, because I don't think they do that. Yeah, so it's just their backpack and there, and so organizing is a big thing. Something I work with my kids with all the time.
And you know, it's true, because what you're saying, Celeste, sometimes teachers ask for a certain color of folder, and certain,
Yeah.
and sometimes parents have their own idea of what they want to bring, but the whole goal is not that the teacher really loves purple and red and yellow. It's helping students organize, so the teacher can say, "Hey, your yellow folder, take out your yellow folder, that's your unfinished work, take home, you know, your take home folder is a different folder." And it's just to help with that translation of executive functioning, so when they're in middle school and in high school, they can choose their own phone color,
Yeah.
but they know how to at least follow that example. And that's the purpose of teaching that executive function, so they're ready for this.
I've been doing that for years. It works really well.
Any final thoughts? Anything we haven't covered that occurred to you as our time went on? It's like you rehearsed. This was so skillfully planned.
Yeah.
I feel very lucky teaching gifted students because this is a second career for me. So the first year I started like in October, so it was a hand-picked classroom, and then the next year I came from a very big school in our district, and I thought they accidentally gave me the cluster class, and I was in a fight. This was fun. I saw it right away, only to figure out I did not have the cluster class, and I was able to identify 6 students who had not been previously tested. And in my mind, I was like, how could you not been tested? So we got them tested and they qualified. And I'm like, I love this. I want to keep this going. And I went to another school. I opened a school. And I really so badly wanted to be the cluster teacher. So I thought I was going to have to like beg and state my case. Became the cluster teacher, and I never let go because these are my people, and the teaching is fun. It's a lot of joy. Whether you're using the grade level curriculum or you're using gifted curriculum, it's just a lot of fun because we get to reach these types of thinkers in different ways, not standardized ways. And that's what makes the whole thing fun for teachers and for the students. That we allow them to experiment, we give them choices, we include their passions. So for me, it's fun. I love it.
Yeah, they're sparky.
Well,
And
and
that's
I
what's
love how they teach me.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
yes.
can't,
Yeah.
sometimes it just blows me away. I'll, you know, have an assignment and they'll get done with it so quick and I'm like, okay, what's next? It's like, well, how would you build a model? Show me what that would look like. And they just take it and they run with it. And it's so fun to see their passion, their excitement, their willingness to just like pivot on a dime. Again, like I said, that there's been a lot of failures in my classroom too, and it's okay, that didn't work. How do you think we can fix it for next time? What can we do differently? And helping them be part of the process. They get ownership, they love it, and it's just so
I was a better teacher because of them. Just like you, I would reflect with them. What can we do differently? What would you improve upon? What would you do? And they guide us to tailor their education. That's really good.
And they love that they get to have quiz.
Well, you have to be 3 steps ahead of them all the time, so that's fun because that does challenge you to be a better you.
Yeah.
Every day, every minute.
My favorite part is the conversations that I get. And sometimes it's not always about the academics we're doing, sometimes it's something that's popped up and is a learning for them. But yeah, it's my very favorite part because they're all engaged and we get to have really good conversations.
Appreciate your time and your expertise and your passion and a whole bunch of other fun words. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I know our friends who are here tonight and those who joined us first. Take a lot away from what you shared at the insights. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you guys have any questions? Did we answer everything?